Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'd like to talk to you about how the media can help create a better future. But first of all, it's worth reminding ourselves what the news does. So fundamentally, the news is there to let us know about what's going on in the world that supposedly is important and most relevant to us. Of course, that's not all that the media does. And in creating an overall story about how our world is, the media doesn't just reflect society back to us, but it also helps shape reality. Where the media puts its focus affects our thoughts, our conversations, our beliefs, our understandings, perspectives, and in turn our choices and actions which ripple out into the world. In fact, the philosopher Alain de Botton recently wrote that in the modern Western world, news has come to replace religion as our central source of guidance and our touchstone of authority. So we should be aware of how the media shapes the collective social consciousness. So by way of applause, who here feels at the moment that the media is too negative or depressing? So for anybody watching online, it was quite hard to spot anybody who wasn't clapping in the audience then. So clearly there's an issue. But I want to be clear that I think it's essential to report crime and war and injustice and famine and to expose exploitation and inequality and to hold power to account. There's a lot of excellent journalism that does this, and there's, despite the failings of the press, which have been made very clear with things like the phone hacking scandal, there are many amazing journalists and editors out there doing a great job and providing something of real value to society. However, I believe that the culture of journalism now needs to evolve because too many people are left feeling disempowered and depressed by the negative focus of much of the media. So we can be left not knowing how to respond effectively to this overwhelming amount of information about what's going wrong. Yet many of us want to stay informed. So at Positive News, we're working to give good news more prominence. And by good news, I don't mean fluffy stories about water skiing squirrels. And we're also encouraging the media as a whole to bring more positive elements within conventional reporting. But why am I talking about this now? Why do we need this change so much now? Well, as you know, as has already been discussed, we're living in a time of global crises, from economic instability to climate change to resource depletion or social inequality. But this is also a time of great prosperity and achievement, a time of innovation, and a time of great possibility. So it's at this time that we need a way of looking at the world that inspires and empowers us all to play a part in creating a better future. So Positive News offers that lens. So for anyone who's not familiar with us, thanks for the introduction, Chris. It's the world's first positive newspaper. We report on positive developments happening around the world as well as in the UK. And we focus on the potential solutions to the problems that we face. We publish daily online and have a quarterly print issue which rounds up the most inspiring news. So what does the other side of the coin look like? Well, although there's really tragic conflicts taking place right now in the world, and we obviously have a long way to go, but statistically, the world is actually becoming more peaceful. For example, the number of wars taking place worldwide fell from 50 in 1990 to 30 in 2010. And levels of violent crime and murder have been falling in this country, as they have in places like New York. And there's many inspiring examples all around us of people changing their lives and their communities, such as Simeon Moore, a former convicted gang member who realized he could turn his life around, and he set up peace talks between two rival gangs in Birmingham. This resulted in the local crime rate falling by 40%, and he's now set up a social enterprise which is using to educate other local young people about why the gangster lifestyle isn't as glamorous as it seems. It's helping them find a better path. And social enterprises as a whole are doing well. They're multiplying and often succeeding where other businesses are failing. And they're showing that business can work profitably, but primarily for the benefit of society and the environment. So there's an incredible amount of grassroots initiatives springing up all over the place, and many of the most interesting ones are around the economy. And one that's really been growing recently is the idea of the sharing economy. So people giving their time and skills and things and sharing them without the need for exchanging money. And this is a world where Rwanda has now elected a parliament where 64% of the seats are held by women. It's a world where an NGO has led the restoration of a massive marshlands area in Iraq that was decimated by war, and it's now becomes Iraq's first ever national park. And Spain, meanwhile, has become the first country in the world to generate more electricity from a renewable energy source, from wind power, than from any other source over the course of a year. While in Germany, they're shutting down coal power stations as their renewable energy capacity expands. And half of the renewable energy generating capacity in Germany is owned by local communities and citizens who get the profits. And this is a world where the president of Uruguay chooses to live the simple life. He donates his salary to charity, he lives on a modest farm, and drives an old VW Beetle. And this is a world where science is now finding that compassion, cooperation, rather than competition, are the key to our survival and most intrinsic to our nature. While the new science of happiness is finding that it's connections to others and connections to the natural world that actually most benefit our well-being. And there's an increasing interest around the world in creating a new economic model that prioritizes people's well-being rather than just maximizing GDP. So although the world's problems are complex and many, there's threads of stories like these, from everyday acts of kindness that are all around us, right up to trying to create a new global economic model. These threads weave themselves through many people's lives, and indeed, there is much change to embrace. So our readers tell us that the stories that we publish have a massive impact on their perspective on the world and how they feel. And I know that when I read these stories and work with them every day, they make me feel energized and open, and they make me want to give, to connect. They give me a feeling of possibility. And above all, they give me an awareness of the human capacity to care and of the human potential. And it's this vast potential that motivates me the most and gives me the most hope for the future. So my vision is for a media that truly serves society by watering the seeds of transformation, by reporting in a way that triggers the human potential, triggers the human spirit. So we need stories that make us come alive. And there's now an emerging scientific basis for this idea. I want to tell you about our media columnist, Catherine Guildenstead. She's an experienced and classically trained investigative reporter. But she also has a master's in positive psychology. And she's now taking the understandings of positive psychology and she's applying them to journalistic technique in order to create more constructive forms of journalism. So positive psychology is the understanding of what enables human beings to thrive. And she did some fascinating research where she found that negative news creates learned helplessness and passivity in people. Whereas if the same core facts are reported on with strong elements in the story or a positive angle, it creates an empowering emotional response where the audience feels they can do something constructive with that information. And Barbara Fredrickson, an expert in positive emotions, says that the laboratory studies have shown that when positive emotions course through us, then it expands our awareness from its habitual focus on ourselves to a more generous focus on the collective and others. So this begs the question of what is the media doing if it's persistently evoking fear and anger and other negative emotions? And what opportunities could there be to connect and cooperate if we were to report in a more positive way in general? Positive news offers a complement to journalism as it stands at the moment. It expands it so that it can present a more truthful and fuller reflection of what's going on in the world. It also benefits our well-being. It engages us in society. And it helps catalyze the potential solutions to the problems we face by drawing more attention to them. But not just on the practical level, because it's stories like these, especially when we share them, that nurture the universal human values that we need to help create that better future. Values such as cooperation and compassion and service to the wider community or to the whole web of life. So if we're looking to embrace the change, I would say, remember the power of how we use our attention and of the stories that we look to understand our world. Because creating a better future begins with bringing our attention to better stories. Thank you for listening.